Hello, we're here to read Selma Lagerlöf's book, The Saga of Gösta Berling. And right now we're going to read chapter 12, Ebba Dohna's story. We've just finished with chapter 11, Ghost Stories. That was a chapter. Let's see. How's chapter 12 going to compare? Is it going to be worse? Is it going to be better? We'll have to see. Here we go. Chapter 12, Ebba Dohna's story. You must be wary of entering the fair promontory on Löwen's eastern shore, around which the inlets glide in with silky waves, the loud promontory where Borg's manor sits. Löwen was never more magnificent than when seen from this height. No one can know how fair it is, this lake of my dreams, until he has seen the morning mists gliding away across the polished surface from Borg's Point, before he has seen it reflect a pale red sunset from the windows in the little blue study, where so many memories reside. But I say to you still, do not go there, for perhaps you will be seized by a desire to remain in the old manor's sorrow-laden halls, perhaps make yourself owner of this fair soil, and if you are young, rich, and fortunate, you, like many another, make your home there with a young spouse. No, it is better not to see the beautiful promontory, for no happiness can reside at Borg. Know that however rich, however fortunate you may be, once you move in, those old tear-drenched floors will soon be drinking your tears as well, and those walls, which could repeat so many sounds of sorrow, would collect your sighs too. It's a cheery chapter, isn't it? Woo. An unfavorable fate hangs over this lovely estate. It is as if misfortune were buried there, but, finding no peace in its grave, constantly rises up out of it to torment the living. If I were master at Borg, I would ransack the ground, both the bedrock of the stands of fir and the cellar floors of the houses and the fertile soil out in the fields, until I found the witch's worm-eaten corpse, and then I would give her a grave in hallowed ground at the Svartfjord churchyard. And at the burial, I would not skimp on payment for the bell ringer. The bells would sound long and powerful over her, and I would send expensive gifts to the minister and the organist, so that with doubled energy they might consecrate her to eternal rest with oratory and song. Bam! That's writing. Can't forget the organist. Or if this did not help, one stormy night I would let the fire approach the buckling wooden walls and let it ravage everything, so that people might no longer be enticed to dwell in this home of misfortune. Then no one would be able to enter this doomed place. Only the church steeple's black jackdaws would found a colony in the large chimney, rising blackened and eerie over the desolate ground. Yet I would surely be anxious when I saw the flames intertwined over the roof, when thick smoke, reddened by the firelight and interspersed with sparks, poured forth out of the old count's estate. In the crackling and sighing, I would think I heard the lament of homeless people. At the blue tips of the flames, I would think I saw disturbed phantasms hovering. I would think about how sorrow beautifies, how misfortune adorns, and weep as if a temple to old gods had been doomed to disintegration. Yet, quiet now, you who are cawing about misfortunes. Borg still stands, shining at the height of the promontory, protected by its stand of massive fir trees, and the snow-covered fields below glisten in the March day's piercing sunlight. Within its walls, the merry laughter of the happy Countess Elizabeth is still heard. On Sundays, she goes to Svartfjord church, which is close to Borg, and gathers together her little dinner party. The judge at Munkerud and his wife usually come, and the captain from Borga, and the assistant vicar and their wives, and the malevolent Sintram. If Gösta Berling were to come to Svartsjö, wandering on the ice of Löven, she would invite him too. Why shouldn't she invite Gösta Berling? She does not know, does she, that slander is starting to whisper that Gösta often comes over to the eastern shore to meet her. Perhaps he also comes to drink and play cards with Sintram, but that doesn't raise as many questions. Everyone knows that his body is made of iron, but his heart is another matter. Let me get the intonation right. She does not know, does she, that slander is starting to whisper that Gösta often comes over to the eastern shore to meet her. Perhaps he also comes to drink and play cards with Sintram, but that doesn't raise as many questions. Everyone knows that his body is made of iron, but his heart is another matter. There is simply no one who believes that he can see a pair of glistening eyes and light hair curling around a white forehead without falling in love. The young countess is good to him. There is nothing remarkable about that. She is good to everyone. She sets ragged beggar urchins on her lap, and when she rides past an old wretch on the highway, she lets the coachman stop to let the poor pedestrian into her sleigh. Gösta usually sits in the little blue study, where there is a splendid view over the lake, and reads poetry to her. There cannot be anything wrong with that. He does not forget that she is a countess, and he a homeless adventurer, and it is good for him to associate with someone who stands high and holy to him. He may just as well imagine falling in love with the Queen of Sheba, who adorns the panels on the balcony in Svartsjö Church, as with her. He desires simply to serve her, as a page serves his elevated mistress, to tie her skate, to hold her skein of yarn, to guide her sled. There can be no question of love between them, but he is the right man to find his happiness in a romantic, harmless infatuation. The young count is silent and serious, and Gösta is exuberantly happy. He is the kind of companionship that the young countess wants. No one who sees her thinks she is harboring a forbidden love. She thinks about dance and merriment. She wishes that the earth were completely flat, without stones, without hills and lakes, so that you could go everywhere dancing. From cradle to grave she would dance in narrow, thin-soled silk shoes. But rumors are not merciful to young women. When these guests come to Borg and have dinner, after the meal the gentlemen usually go into the count's room to sleep and smoke. The old ladies usually sink down into the armchairs in the drawing room and lean their venerable heads against the high arms. But the Countess and Anna Sternhög go into the blue study and exchange endless confidences. The Sunday after the one when Anna Sternhög fetched Ulrika Dillner back to Berga, they are again sitting there. No one on earth is unhappier than this young girl. All her merriment is gone, and gone is the happy defiance that she would set against everything and everyone who wanted to get too close to her. Everything that happened to her on the way home has descended in her awareness into the twilight out of which it was enchanted. She has not a single clear impression left. Well, one that poisons her soul. What if it wasn't God who did it? She would whisper to herself. What if it wasn't God who sent the wolves? She demands signs. She demands miracles. She gazes around heaven and earth, but she sees no finger extending out of the sky to point out her path. No columns of mist and light go before her. As she is now sitting across from the Countess in the little blue study, her gaze falls on a small bouquet of blue anemones that the Countess is holding in her white hand. Like a thunderbolt, it strikes her that she knows where those anemones have grown, that she knows who has picked them. She does not need to ask. Where in the entire region do blue anemones grow already at the beginning of April, except in the birch meadow that is on the lakeshore slope at Akeby. She stares and stares at the small blue stars, these fortunate ones who have everyone's heart, these small prophets who, lovingly themselves, are also irradiated by the luster of everything lovely, which they herald, of everything lovely that is to come. While she observes them, her soul begins to resound with wrath, rumbling like thunder, deafening like lightning. By what right, she thinks, does Countess Dohna carry this bouquet of blue anemones picked on the shore of the path at Akeby? They were all tempters. Sintram, the countess, they all wanted to lure Gösta Berling to that which was evil, but she would defend him, even if it were to cost her heart's blood. She would do it. She thinks that she must see those flowers torn from the countess's hand and thrown away, trampled, crushed, before she leaves the blue study. She is thinking this, and she begins a struggle against the small blue stars. Out in the drawing room, the old women lean their venerable heads against the armchairs and suspect nothing. The gentlemen puff on their pipes in calm and quiet in the count's room. All is peace. Only in the little blue study is a desperate struggle raging. They do well who keep their hands from the sword, they who understand to quietly bide their time, to set their hearts at peace and let God direct. The restless heart always goes astray. Evil always makes the evil worse. But Anna Sternhög believes that she has now finally seen the finger in the sky. Anna, says the countess, tell a story. About what? Oh, says the countess, stroking the bouquet with her white hand. Do you know anything about love? Anything about being in love? No, I know nothing of love. The way you talk, isn't there a place here called Akeby? A place full of cavaliers? Well, says Anna, there is a place here called Akeby, and there are men who suck the marrow of the land, who make us incapable of serious work, who destroy our maturing youth and lead our best minds astray. Do you want to hear about them? Do you want to hear love stories about them? I would. I like the cavaliers. Then Anna Sternhög speaks in short stanzas, like an old hymn book, for she is close to suffocating from tempestuous feelings. Concealed passion trembles under every word, and the countess must listen to her with both fear and interest. What is the love of a cavalier? What is the faith of a cavalier? One sweetheart today, one tomorrow, one in the east and one in the west. Nothing is too high for him and nothing too low. One day a count's daughter, another day a beggar lass. Nothing on the earth is so capricious as his heart. But poor anyone who loves a cavalier. She has to seek him where he lies drunk on the roadside. She must silently look on as he fritters away her child's home at the gaming table. She has to put up with him swooning around strange women. Oh, Elizabeth, if a cavalier asks an honorable woman for a dance, then she ought to deny him that. If he sends her a bouquet of flowers, then she ought to cast the flowers on the ground and trample on them. If she loves him, then she ought to die rather than marry him. Among the cavaliers there is one who was a defrocked minister. He lost his minister's robe because of drunkenness. He was drunk in the church. He drank up the communion wine. Have you heard tell of him? No. Immediately after, he was removed from his position. He wandered around the countryside like a beggar. He drank like a lunatic. He would steal to get liquor. What is his name? He is no longer at Akeby. The majoress at Akeby took care of him, gave him clothes, and convinced your mother-in-law, the Countess Dohna, to make him a tutor for your husband, the young Count Henrik. A defrocked minister? Is it true? Oh, he was a young, powerful man with good abilities. There was no problem with him, as long as he did not drink. The Countess Märta was not particular. It amused her to annoy the dean and the assistant vicar. She forbade, however, that anyone should mention his previous life to her children. Then her son would have lost respect for him, and her daughter would not have been able to tolerate him, because she was a saint. Then he came here to Borg. He stopped right inside the door, sat at the very edge of the chair, kept silent at the table, and fled out into the park when visitors came here. But out there, he used to encounter the young Ebba Dohna on the deserted pathways. She was not one who loved the noisy parties that thundered through the halls of Borg since the Countess had become a widow. She was not one who sent defiant glances out into the world. She was so gentle, so shy. She was still a gentle child when she had already reached the age of 17, but she was nonetheless very lovely, with her brown eyes and the faint, fine redness of her cheeks. Her delicate, slender body leaned feebly forward. Her narrow hand sneaked its way into yours with a shy pressure. Her small mouth was the most silent of mouths, and the most serious. Oh, her voice, her sweet little voice, which pronounced the words so slowly and well, but never ringing with youthful energy, youthful heat, but instead came dragging with muted intonation like a tired musician's final chord. She was not like others. Her foot walked the ground so lightly, so silently, as if she had only been a frightened refugee down here. She kept her eyes lowered so as not to be disturbed in observing the magnificent of her. She kept her eyes lowered so as not to be disturbed in observing the magnificence of her inner visions. Her soul had turned away from the earth, even when she was a small child. When she was small, her grandmother used to tell stories to her, and one evening the two of them were sitting by the fire, but the stories had come to an end. Carsus and Moderus and Carsus and Moderus and Loncentus and the lovely Melusina had risen and lived. They must be some characters that they had in the stories. I don't know who that is. Like the flames of the fire, they had tumbled about in life and luster, but now the heroes lay defeated, until the next fire awakened them again. But the little girl's hand was still on the old woman's skirt, and she slowly stroked the silk, that lusty fabric that peeped like a little bird. And this stroking was her prayer, for she was one of those children who never pray in words. Then very quietly the old woman started to tell her about a little child in the land of Judah, about a little child who was born to become a great king. The angels had filled the earth with songs of praise when he was born. The kings of the east had come, led by the star of the heavens, and offered him gold and incense, and the old men and women prophesied his glory. This child grew up to greater beauty and wisdom than all other children. Even when he was 12 years old, his wisdom was greater than the high priests and the scholars. Then the old woman told her about the most beautiful thing the earth has seen, about the child's life while it existed among humankind, about the wicked people who did not want to acknowledge him as their king. She told her about how the child became a man, but miracles still radiated from him. Everything on the earth served him and loved him, except the people. The fishes let themselves be caught in his net. Bread filled his baskets. Water turned itself into wine when he wished it. But the people did not give the great king a golden crown, a shining throne. He had no bowing courtiers. Around him. They let him go among them as a beggar. Yet he was so good to them, this great king. He healed their sick, gave the blind back their sight, and awakened the dead. But, said the old woman, the people would not have the good king as their lord. They sent their soldiers against him and imprisoned him. In derision they dressed him in a crown and scepter and in a silk mantle, and let him walk out to the execution site, carrying a heavy cross. O my child, the good king loved the tall mountains. At night he would climb them to speak with the residents of heaven, and he liked to sit on the mountain slopes during the day and speak to listening people. But now they led him up onto the mountain in order to crucify him. They hammered nails through his hands and feet and hanged the good king on a cross, as if he had been a robber and evildoer. And the people mocked him. Only his mother and his friends wept because he was going to die before he had time to become a king. Oh, how lifeless things grieved at his death. The sun lost its light, and the mountains shook. The veil in the temple was torn, and the graves opened for the dead, that they might go out and show their sorrow. Then the little girl lay with her head on her grandmother's lap and sobbed as if her heart would burst. Don't cry, little one. The good king rose up from his grave and went up to his Father in heaven. Grandmother, sobbed the poor little thing, so he never got a kingdom? He is sitting at God's right hand in heaven. But this did not console her. She wept as helplessly and unrestrained as a child can weep. Why were they so mean to him? Why did they have to be so mean to him? The old woman was almost afraid of this overwhelming sorrow. Tell me, grandmother, tell me that you haven't told the story right. Say that it didn't end like that. Say that they weren't so mean to the good king. Say that he got a kingdom on earth. She wrapped her arms around the old woman and begged, with tears still streaming. Child, child, her grandmother then said to console her. There are those who believe that he will come again. Then he will place the earth under his dominion and govern it. A magnificent kingdom will be made of the beautiful earth. It will stand for 1,000 years. Then the bad animals will become good. Little children will play in the viper's nest, and bears and cows will graze together. No one will harm or injure the other any longer. Spears will be bent into size, and swords hammered into plows, and everything will be play and happiness, for the good will possess the earth. Then the little one's face lit up behind her tears. Will the good king get a throne then, grandmother? A throne of gold. And servants and courtiers and a golden crown? Yes, he will. Is he coming soon, grandmother? No one knows when he is coming. May I sit on a stool at his feet then? Yes, you may. Grandmother, I'm so happy, said the little one. Evening after evening, through many winters, these two sat by the fire and talked about the good king and his realm. The little one dreamed about a 1,000-year realm, both night and day. She never tired of adorning it with every lovely thing she could think of. It is that way with many of the silent children who surround us, that they harbor a secret dream that they do not dare to mention. Strange thoughts dwell under many a soft head of hair. The brown, gentle eyes see strange things behind their closed eyes. Many a lovely maiden has her bridegroom in heaven. Many a rosy cheek wants to rub the good king's feet with ointment and dry it with her hair. Ebba Dohna did not dare mention to anyone, but ever since that evening she lived only for the Lord's 1,000-year kingdom and to await his arrival. When the red skies of evening opened the western gate, she wondered if she would not step out from it, radiant with gentle brilliance, followed by an army of millions of angels, and march past and allow her to touch the folds of his mantle. She also thought gladly about the pious women who had hung a veil over their heads and never raised their eyes from the earth, instead closing themselves within the peacefulness of gray cloisters, in the darkness of small cells, so as to always be able to see the radiant visions that appear out of the night of the soul. She had grown up that way. She was that way when she and the new tutor met in the desolate pathways of the park. I do not wish to say more bad things about him than I have to. I want to believe that he loved this child, who soon chose him as a companion on lonely wanderings. I believe that his soul regained its wings as he walked at the side of this silent girl who had never confided in anyone else. I think that he himself felt like a child, good, pious, virtuous. But if he loved her, why did he not think about the fact that he could not give her a worse gift than his love? He, one of the cast-offs of this world. What did he want? What was he thinking as he walked beside the Count's daughter? What was the defrocked minister thinking about as she confided her pious dreams to him? What did he want? He who had been a drinker and a brawler and would be so again when the occasion arose, at the side of her who dreamed of a bridegroom in heaven. Why did he not flee far, far away from her? Would it not have been better for him if he had wandered begging and thieving around the countryside than that he should be there in the silent lanes of conifers and again become good, pious, virtuous, when it still could not be lived over? When it still could not be lived over, that life that he had led. Start it once again. Would it not have been better for him if he had wandered begging and thieving around the countryside than that he should be there in the silent lanes of conifers and again become good, pious, virtuous, when it still could not be lived over, that life that he had led, and when it could not be avoided that Ebba Dohna would love him? Do not believe that he looked like a drunken wretch with pale gray cheeks and reddened eyes. He was a stately man, handsome and unbroken in soul and body. He had a posture like a king and a body of iron, which was not ruined by the wildest living. Is he still alive? Asked the Countess. Oh no, he must be dead by now. All of this was so long ago. There was something within Anna Sternherr that begins to shudder at what she is doing. She starts to think that she must never tell the Countess who the man is that she is talking about, that she must let her believe that he is dead. At that time he was still young. She begins her story anew. The happiness of living was ignited against the happiness of living was ignited again in him. His was the gift of beautiful words and the fiery, easily impassioned heart. There came an evening when he talked with Ebba Dohna about love. She did not reply. She said to him only what her grandmother had told her in the winter evening, and described for him the land of her dreams. Then she took a promise from him. She let him swear that he would become a herald of God's word, one of those who would prepare the way of the Lord, so that his arrival would be hastened. What should he do? He was a defrocked minister, and no way was so barred for him as the one that she wanted him to embark on. But he dared not tell her the truth. He did not have the heart to distress this kindly child whom he loved. He promised everything that she wanted. Then no further words were required between them. It was clear that she would one day become his wife. This was not a love with kisses and embraces. He hardly dared get close to her. She was as delicate as a fragile flower, but her brown eyes were lifted at times from the ground to seek his. On moonlit evenings, as they sat on the veranda, she crept close to him, and then he kissed her hair without her noticing it. But he realized that his sin was that he forgot both past and future, that he was poor and insignificant, that he would of course prefer to forget, but he ought always to have known that a day must come when in her awareness love would rise up against love, earth against heaven, and when she would be forced to choose between him and the radiant Lord of the 1,000-year realm, and she was not one who could endure such a struggle. A summer passed, an autumn, a winter. When spring came and the ice melted, Ebba Dohna became ill. The ground was thawing in the valleys. The brooks were swelling. The lakes were unsafe. The roads impossible to travel, either by sleigh or by cart. Then Countess Dohna wanted to have the doctor fetched from Karlstad. There was no one closer, but she commanded in vain. She could not induce a servant to go, either with prayers or threats. She fell on her knees for the coachman, but he refused. She had cramps and convulsions from sorrow over her daughter. She is wild in sorrow as well as in happiness, Countess Märta. Ebba Dohna had pneumonia, and her life was in danger, but no doctor could be fetched. Then the tutor went to Karlstad. Making that journey with the roads in such a state was gambling with your life, but he did it. The journey went across buckling ice and breakneck swells in the river. At times he had to cut stair steps for the horse in the ice. At times he had to pull the horse out of the road's deep clay. It was said that the doctor refused to come along with him, but that with pistol in hand he forced him to come along. When he came back, the countess was ready to throw herself at his feet. "Take everything," she said. "Say what you want, what you desire. My daughter, my estate, my money." "Your daughter," replied the tutor. Anna Sternhök suddenly falls silent. "Well, what then? What happens next?" asks Countess Elizabeth. "That's enough for now," answers Anna, for she is one of those pitiful people who live under the anxiety and fear of doubt. For an entire week now she has been like that. She does not know what she wants. What seems right to her one moment becomes wrong the next. Now she wishes that she had never started this story. "I'm starting to think that you want to make fun of me, Anna. Don't you understand that I must hear the end of this story?" There's not much left to tell. The hour of struggle had come for the young Ebba Dohna. Love raised up against love, earth against heaven. Countess Märta told her about the marvelous journey which the young man had made for her sake, and she told her that as a reward she had therefore granted him her hand. The young Miss Ebba was then so far advanced on the way to improvement that she was lying dressed on a sofa. She was weak and tired, and even more silent than usual. When she heard these words, she raised her brown eyes reproachfully toward her mother and said to her, "Mamma, have you given me away to a defrocked minister, to one who has forfeited his right to be God's servant, to a man who has been a thief and a beggar?" "But child, who told you this? I thought you didn't know anything." "I found out. I heard your guests talking about him the same day I got sick." "But child, keep in mind that he saved your life." "I am keeping in mind that he has deceived me. He should have told me who he was." "He says that you love him." "I did love him. I cannot love anyone who has deceived me." "In what way has he deceived you?" "You will not understand, Mamma." She did not want to speak with her mother about the 1,000-year realm of her dreams, which her beloved would have helped her to make a reality. "Ebba," said the countess, "if you love him, then you should not ask about what he has been, but rather marry him. The husband of a Countess Dohna will be rich and powerful enough, so that the sins of his youth will be excused." "I do not care about the sins of his youth, Mamma. It is because he can never become what I wanted him to become that I cannot marry him." "Ebba, don't forget that I have given him my word." The girl turned white as a corpse. "Mamma, I am telling you that if you marry me to him, you are separating me from God." "I have decided to make you happy," says the countess. "I am certain that you will be happy with this man. Haven't you already succeeded in making a saint out of him? I have decided to overlook the demands of ancestry and forget that he is poor and despised, to give you the opportunity to restore his reputation. I know that what I am doing is right. You know that I despise all ancient prejudices." But she is saying all this simply because she does not tolerate anyone setting herself against her will, perhaps also because she meant it when she said it. Countess Märta is not easy to understand. The young woman remained lying on her sofa a long while, after the countess had left her. She fought her battle. Earth rose up against heaven, love against love, but her childhood's beloved won the victory. Where she lay, right there on the sofa, she saw the western sky glowing with a magnificent sunset. She thought that this was a greeting from the good king, and as she would not have been able to remain faithful to him if she had lived, she decided to die. She could do nothing else when her mother wanted her to belong to one who could not be the good king's servant. She went over to the window, opened it, and let the twilight's cold, damp air thoroughly chill her poor, weak body. It was an easy task for her to bring death on herself. It was certain if the illness were to begin anew, and it did. There is no other than myself who knows that she sought death out, Elizabeth. I found her by the window. I heard her feverish fantasies. She liked having me by her side during her final days. It was I who saw her die, who saw how one evening hour she extended her arms towards the glowing west and died, smiling as if she had seen someone appear from the brilliance of the sunset to meet her. I was also the one who had to convey her final greeting to the one whom she had loved. I was to ask him to forgive that she could not become his wife. The good king did not allow it. But I have not dared to tell that man that he was her murderer. I have not dared set the weight of such agony on his shoulders, and yet he, who lied his way to her love, was he not her murderer? Wasn't he, Elizabeth? The Countess Dohna had long ceased stroking the blue flowers. Now she gets up, and the bouquet falls to the floor. Anna, you are still making fun of me. You say that the story is old and that the man was dead a long time ago. But I know that it is scarcely 5 years since Ebba Dohna died, and you are telling about it as if you yourself have been part of the whole thing. You're not old. Tell me who the man is. Anna Sternhög started to laugh. You wanted a love story. Now you've got one, which has cost you both tears and worry. Do you mean that you have lied? Nothing other than poetry and lies, the whole thing. You're mean, Anna. That may be. I am not altogether happy either, I should say. But the wives are awake and the gentlemen have come into the drawing room. Let's go out there. On the threshold she is stopped by Gösta Berling, who is coming to look for the young ladies. You must have patience with me, he says, laughing. I will only bother you for 10 minutes. But you must hear some verse. He tells them that last night he dreamed as vividly as seldom before, dreamed that he had written verse. He, whom people called the poet, although up until now he had not deserved such a nickname, got up in the middle of the night and, half asleep, half awake, started to write. It was a complete poem that he found on his table the next morning. He would never have believed any such thing about himself. Now the ladies would hear it. And he reads, Now the moon came up, and with it came the sweetest hour of the day. From the clear pale blue high arch, he molded his shimmer onto vine-encircled terrace, at whose foot trembled in its garden urn a yellow-red lily whose cup is edged by golden rays. On the broad staircase's solid surface we had all sat down, the old ones and the young ones, silent at first to let our feelings sing the heart's old ballads on the sweetest hour of the day. From the mignonette cluster its sweet aroma spread to us, and from the dark thicket of the bushes shadows stole across glistening dew-drenched lawn. Then from the darkness of the bodies the spirit dances to the realm of light, to the regions he can scarce perceive, to the light pale blue high loft, in whose clarity a star can almost be discerned. Oh, who against the play of feelings can defend the play of night shadows? with the sorrow-laden odor of mignonette. A French rose lets its fall. A French rose lets fall its final pallid petal, without the play of wind forcing its offering. So, we thought, would we our own lives give, vanish in space like the sound of notes, like autumn's yellowed leaves without complaint becoming nothing. Oh, we extend the rows of years, disturb the peace of nature to enjoy the illusion of living. Death is life's reward, so we must live it quietly, as a French rose as a French rose lets fall its final pallid petal. On its fluttering wing a bat flew past us, flew and was seen again there, wherever the moon shone. But then it rose up from distressed hearts. The question that no one had yet answered, the question, like sorrow heavy, the question old as pain, oh, where are we going? What paths shall we wander, we, when we no longer on earth's verdant meadows walk? If anyone can show the spirit's path to another, he more easily shows the way to the animal that just fluttered past us. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder, her soft hair, she who loved me, and whispered quietly to me, do not believe that souls fly off to distant realms of space. When I have died, do not believe that I am far away. Into a beloved person's soul my homeless spirit will slip, and I will come and live with you, and I will come and live in you. Oh, what anxiety! From sorrow my heart would burst. She would die then, die soon. Was this night her last? Did I give my last kiss to my beloved's billowing hair? Years have vanished since. Still I sit many a time at the old place when the night is dark and silent. But I shudder at the moon's sheen on vine-encircled terrace. He who alone knows how often there my love I kissed, he who would blend his trembling light among the tears that fell down on my beloved's hair. Woe to the torment of memory! Oh, this is the torment of my poor sinful spirit, that he is her home. What punishment can he expect to risk, who once bound himself to a soul so pure, so sinless? Gösta, says Anna in a joking tone while her voice is about to be tied in knots by anxiety, they say that you have experienced more poems than others who have done nothing else their whole lives, have written. But do you know, you do best composing in your own way. That poem should never see the light of day, you know. Gösta, says Anna in a joking tone while her voice is about to be tied in knots by anxiety, they say that you have experienced more poems than others who have done nothing else their whole lives, have written. But do you know, you do best composing in your own way. That poem should never see the light of day, you know. You are not gentle. Coming and reading such things about death and misery. Aren't you ashamed? Gösta is no longer listening to her. His eyes are directed at the young countess. She is sitting completely rigid, immobile, as a statue. He thinks she is going to faint. But with endless difficulty, a word passes across her lips. Go, she says. Who should go? Should I go? The minister must go, she stammers out. Elizabeth, be quiet now. The drunken minister must get out of my house. Anna, asks Gösta. What does she mean? It's best that you go, Gösta. Why should I go? What does this mean? Anna, says Countess Elizabeth. Tell him. The Countess bites her teeth together and overcomes her agitation. Mr. Berling, she says, going over to him, you have a remarkable ability to cause people to forget who you are. I have not known it before today. I have just heard the story about the death of Ebba Dohna, and that it was the information that she loved an unworthy man that killed her. Your poem has let me understand that this man is you. I cannot understand how anyone, with the past you have lived, can show himself in the company of an honorable woman? I cannot understand it, Mr. Berling. Am I clear enough now? Yes, you are, Countess. I only want to say a single word in defense. I was convinced, I have been convinced the entire time, that you have known everything about me. I have never tried to conceal anything, but it cannot, of course, be amusing to shout out the bitterest misfortunes of your life on the roads, least of all to do it yourself. He leaves. And at the same moment, Countess Dohna sets her narrow foot on the little bouquet with the blue stars. You have now done what I have wanted, says Anna Sternhög harshly to the Countess, but now our friendship is also at an end. You must not think that I can forgive that you have been cruel to him. You have turned him away, mocked and wounded him, and I would follow him into prison, to the pillory, if such were the case. It is I who will guard him and preserve him. You have done what I wanted, but I will never forgive you. But Anna, if I told you this, do you think I did it with a happy heart? Have I not been sitting here and, piece by piece, tearing the heart out of my chest? So why did you do it? Why? Because I did not want him to become a married woman's lover. Okay. That's Ebba Dohna's story. Quite a story. That was chapter 12 of the story of Gösta Berling, the things that people do. The next chapter is going to be chapter 13, called Mamsell Marie, and we'll leave that for another day. Thanks for today. Bye for now.